It's that time of year again. Champions League playoffs are set, and it's time to predict who is going through, who is going out. We've got big players and small players, but there's no easy matchups to predict. So let's get into it. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to the Seb Central podcast. I'm your host, Sebastian Silva. Today, we're diving straight into the UEFA Champions League playoff matchups. They are set to take place this week, and I could not be more excited for them. So many great matchups throughout these next couple of weeks. It is going to be really, really tough to predict, which is why I've called on a guest for me to help out and break down each of these matchups one by one. So let's get into it. Before we go in, make sure to please drop a like and subscribe to the channel. Comment as well. Any support is appreciated. And stay tuned for more podcasts. I'm going to try to be more consistent with them. Try to dive into all the different areas of sports because it's a busy year for sports and I want to keep you all posted and updated with everything going on. But without further, let's get into playoffs with me, my good friend Abdul, breaking down the Champions League. Welcome to a special episode of the Seb Central podcast. We'll be previewing the Champions League playoff games. I'm joined by my good friend Abdul. Can you introduce yourself?
What's going on, guys? My name's Abdul. I've known Seb for a long time. It's a good friend of mine. We met a couple years back in Toronto, and we've been talking sports on Instagram, ever since then. This has been long in the works, and, I'm really excited. I'm really honored to be invited here. I appreciate you, Sebastian. And, we could dive right into it whenever you're ready, but I'm really excited. I'm super excited.
I know I've been looking forward to this as well. For like a bit more context, we met, like you said, like almost 3 years ago now. It's crazy that it's
Yeah,
been like that long. We met at the what was through the wire at the time. Obviously now their numbers on the board. We met at their they went on tour and they came to Toronto. We were there at like 4 p.m. We were like one of the first people there, and we just like chopped it up. We chopped it up basically until show started, and yeah, it was all
hmm
good, and we just kept in
walk
contact
around
since then.
downtown, you know what I'm saying? Walk around downtown, getting drinks, waiting. It was a blast. And
Yeah,
we didn't even know each other. We hadn't known each other before that. We just kind of
exactly. Yeah.
I think you realized I was here for Through the Wire. I realized you were there for Through the Wire.
hmm
And we just chilled until the show started. It was fire. And we sat next to each other too, front row.
Yeah, yeah. What's also funny about that now, I go to the school that I go to, a person that I'm cool with, his name's Chris. He got there like few minutes after me, few minutes after us.
Damn.
And like we were within like a couple people of each other of
But you
of
guys
of on
didn't know
that
each other
day.
yet,
Again,
right?
we didn't know each other. I mean, like I don't know if we like interacted at all, but like now obviously we come together, we see him like every day now, and it's crazy how like I went there knowing meeting you, but it's like if I came maybe a couple minutes later, could have
Yeah, you
known
would have
him
met your
before,
friend
but
who
then
you went to.
obviously
Yeah.
and now we know each other, so it's crazy. Shout out to Chris. He's got doing his thing in NBA stuff as well. But we're not talking about basketball today. That's I'd love to talk basketball another time. Think of maybe when the season comes to an end and stuff. And there's obviously playoffs and stuff. We'll look forward to that. But right now we're going to talk about the Champions League. Now, before I get into that, obviously the Champions League's changed a lot in the last couple of years. They've implemented the new format of making it from a group stage to like a league stage, and then obviously added playoff rounds. So like, I want to know like, what do you think like about that change? Because and just things that you like from it, and things that maybe you would change. Just overall, what do you think of that change from groups to league stage and that all that stuff that they UEFA have done to try to make it better?
That's a great question. I mean, I hate to sound super traditional, but it rubbed me the wrong way at first. I'm not really good with change when it comes to the sports that I love. Like, for example, if a team changes their logo, I'll be super nostalgic and I won't, you know what I'm saying? I won't get accustomed to it until a couple of years after. But at first, I didn't really like the new league format. I wanted it to be the group stage. I had so many memories from watching group stage matches, and then I was so accustomed to it that I couldn't really get around this one. But in retrospect, I don't really know why I felt like that. I feel like this is actually a good change. It gives a lot of teams an opportunity to advance. We're seeing teams in the round of 32 that we probably would have never seen get out of a group stage. Like we see Karabag, we see Galatasaray that would have never gone out of a group stage if we were still in the group stage. You see, you know what I'm saying, Bodo Glimt, they just had their first Champions League win ever, and they had it against Manchester City. So I feel like it gives Champions League a lot of parity. You see a lot of upsets. You see a lot of fixtures that you wouldn't previously see. Um, and it even gives you a good sense of, okay, early on in the Champions League, who is playing the best? We knew unequivocally that Arsenal was the best team in the Champions League, but we knew that because there was a standings list. There was like a first through 24th. Like it was really easy and really transparent to see how all these teams were playing and how all these teams fared against each other. So all in all, I really do like the change. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I like the point that you brought up actually there at the beginning when you said, it was hard to kind of get accustomed to it because I think a lot of this like with sports fans, but I think soccer fans especially where we're not usually accustomed to like things being changed. We're very like traditional of how things are like and I like that UEFA took on that risk and I think at this point everyone can agree that I think the change has been very positive and I think it makes things a lot more competitive from both standpoints of the top teams trying to compete for those top eight spots gets them, an extra round that they can advance automatically. And you have the teams at the bottom there fighting for playoff spots that, again, they previously wouldn't have as much access to in the group format. And another thing about the group format back then was that once you got to like the second last game, 90% of the groups were like basically done. Like we knew who was going to go through. It was maybe one or two groups that you still had to wait on, but it felt like by the end it was like okay, just get on to the knockout stage. And another thing was that there was also this like 2 month gap between
Hmm.
like knockout stage or group stage and knockout stage. And by that point like things changed so much, but with this now with they add more games, it makes it a lot more closer together and it feels like, oh, you get to the round of 16, it was like, oh, I forgot that there's actually Champions League happening. So I think in that sense, I really like the changes that they've done. But at the same time, like not all changes are going to be good. Like I know a couple years ago they tried to change the extra time thing. They tried to do like golden goal, silver goal. That didn't work
Hmm.
out, and they changed that. But I think changes like this are what essentially move the game forward. And I think I know again it was unpopular at the time, but I think since then they've really smashed it with this format. I think especially that last match day was
Yeah.
incredible. It was incredible. Like 18 matches at once. I mean that's crazy. I think one thing I would love to see though is that I know in the NFL they have this program called Red Zone where
Hmm. Hmm.
you can essentially like skip between each games and like see what happens like so if there's like a touchdown you get to see that jump to that game then jump to another game if a team's close to scoring. I'd love to see something like that for the Champions League and specifically for that day when you have the 18 games at once because that's just wild and there was some incredible moments in that match day that were really good. And again before we go into the knockout stage, what would you say has like been the biggest surprise so far from the league phase? Like it could be a team. Like what was the thing that surprised you the most?
It's a good question. I honestly have a couple. One even coming from the last match day that you were talking about with the 18 games at once. Unfortunately, it happened to my big dogs. Um, you know, we lost in excruciating fashion to Benfica, with their goalkeeper scoring the fourth and final goal against us, which was definitely a big shock. Another surprise is actually Tottenham and their success in the league phase, despite their, you know what I'm saying, their woes in the Premier League. Like, for example, like they're sitting 16th in the Premier League right now. I think they're what 5 points off the relegation battle. Yeah, they're fourth in the league phase. I'm just checking right now.
Yeah.
Uh, it's insane, you know, elevated competition. They're able to adjust to that. Um, you saw they fared well against PSG, although they did lose, they fared well. Um, you know, they've had like some can say they've had an easy schedule, but the fact that they're placing fourth in the Champions League phase, despite all of their question marks, you know, in the Premier League and in those like competitions, the EFL Cup and the FA Cup, like it's pretty shocking. That's one thing that shocked me.
Yeah, I think what you brought up there with Tottenham is kind of the similar one that I have for my biggest shock, which is for me, it's Sporting. I think that for a team that's gone through so much change over the last year with Amarim obviously leaving when they were at seemingly a top form, and then obviously Gyökeres leaving over the summer. Even with all that change, they've seamlessly transitioned into where they are right now. They're second in their league still, and in the Champions League they did really well. You talk about Tottenham giving PSG a run. Sporting beat PSG in, and I think that
Oh,
is was a massive result. And considering I think the league that they play in, the Portuguese league, it gets a lot of stick for not being, the most competitive league, and that people say that, oh, those are that it's the reason why those teams don't do as well in Europe because of the competition they play against compared to, say, a Tottenham who, even though they're bad in the Premier League, they can prove that they're still good in the Champions League. I think Sporting have defied that. It's all about the teams in between that are playing this week in the Champions League playoff round. And we're just going to go through each match and from Tuesday and Wednesday and break down a little bit and then say obviously our prediction of who will win. So, first game I want to start off with, it's the first match of tomorrow. Galatasaray against Juventus. I think this is one of the closest matchups I think we could see of this playoff round. You have two teams that really underachieved, I would say, as far as what they could do on paper. I think Galatasaray at one point were pretty close to actually getting a top eight spot. They obviously fell pretty short of that in the last couple of games, but even then, I still think they've proven themselves to be a formidable opponent. And when you have a guy like Victor Osimhen, one of the best strikers in the world, he scored 6 goals so far in this Champions League. I think anything is possible against the Juve team that, at the moment, they haven't been at their best.
I'm gonna back my boys, and I'm gonna say Galatasaray. I love Turkey. You know what I'm saying? I love Victor Osimhen. I love the flair that he brings. I love the passion that he brings to the game for both Galatasaray and the Nigerian national team. Um, and then I think Juventus. I think I just I think they're lacking direction. I think they're in a phase in their you know what I'm saying, in their history where they kind of don't know what to do. Usually, you see them as like a potent Serie A giant, you know what I'm saying, making it to the quarterfinals, semifinals of the Champions League, maybe even the finals. But you're not seeing as much as that nowadays. So I'm gonna go with Galatasaray. I'm curious to know what you think of that.
So as much as I think Galatasaray will have the best player on the pitch with Victor Osimhen, I look at Juventus and I think you briefly mentioned Turkey. Juventus have, in my opinion, the best Turkish player in the world in Kenan Yildiz. And I think he is an absolute game changer. If there's any reason why Juventus would be able to go through, it would be because of him. Now, one thing I do worry about Juventus is the fact that their top scorer in the Champions League, Dusan Vlahovic, he's not going to be fit enough to play. I think
Hmm.
that will mean you'll either see Lois Openda or Jonathan David have to step up in their absence. But I think when you have a Yildiz and when you have even a Conceição that can step up, I think for Juve, the key for them is to survive that first game. That first game in Turkey is going to be really, really difficult with obviously the Galatasaray. We know how crazy their fans get. And it's one of the hardest places to play. So if they can get through that unscathed, I think the return leg for them is going to be huge. And I think that's where we'll see the best of Juve, and I think evidently I think that's what it's going to come down to, and I think that return leg is going to favor them. So I'm actually going to give the edge to Juventus. I'm going to say 4-3, and I think
On
I
aggregate,
think I
okay.
think I think Yildiz will score probably the winner in that second one.
I mean, yeah, I mean you almost convinced me, but I can't be wishy-washy. I gotta stick with my boys. I think my aggregate prediction could be because I feel like both these teams have the potential to be high scoring. I think 4-3 is not a bad one, but I would say maybe 3-2. Yeah, 3-2 aggregate Galatasaray.
All right, so already we're like splitting opinions here. No, I like it. That's good. All right, next one. Sticking with another Italian team, going with Atalanta against Dortmund. Now, Atalanta, a couple, and they really bounced back this year. Obviously, 2 years ago they won the Europa League with Gasperini. That was, I'd say, the pinnacle of them. Kind of went off since then, but they're really on the back up there. They've lost just one game in 2026, and they smashed Juventus earlier this month 3-0 in the Coppa Italia. So I think with that, I think they're going to have a lot of confidence going into this one.
I agree. Yeah, I think with the departure though of Ademola Lookman, I think that could maybe not play in their favor. And then you see this Dortmund team. They've been kind of keeping afloat in the Bundesliga. Of course, Bayern Munich is far and away the best team in Germany. But um, Dortmund, you see even with their signings from the summer, Joe Bellingham, he hasn't been playing his best. 32 games with no goals. Um, it's a bit of a shaky start for him. Um, I do believe though, I do believe in Dortmund coming out of this alive. Um, like you said about Galatasaray, they really need to hone in on this first match that they have at the Signal Iduna Park in Dortmund. And I think that if they can play well and they can escape with a sizable lead in this first match, that they can go on and hold down the fort in the second match.
Yeah, I mean, as far as we talk about experience here, I think Dortmund is one of the more experienced teams. They always been able to go on big runs in Europe, and I think there are, from an attacking standpoint, they are a lot more prone with Sekou Guirassy. I think last year he led the Champions League in scoring at 13 goals. Hasn't had that same form this year, but with a guy of his quality, he can just catch fire at any time. I like this match because it's a tale of two different styles. You have Atalanta, very hard team to break down, typical like Syriac kind of team. And you have Dortmund that's all about, attacking in waves. And we saw that against, in their first game of their Champions League against Juventus, they played out a 4-4 draw. So
Hmm.
I think this game will evidently come down to which team can impose their style more. And for Dortmund, one thing I also really worry about them is they're down two starting center backs with Schlotterbeck and Nicolas Sula both out. And I think that will play a huge factor. I think as much as I can give Dortmund credit for their experience, I think losing two defenders like that is huge, and I think it's going to force them to be a little bit more conservative and not be as forward pushing because they know they're a lot more vulnerable back there. So I think knowing that, I think Atalanta will probably play to their strength more, and I think I favor them in this one. Low scoring for
Hmm.
for their sake. I think it'll be a 3-1 for them.
I mean, I think I can't argue with your logic. I mean, I've seen. I guess this is more of a nostalgic standpoint, but I mean, Borussia Dortmund have always been these, what I'm saying, these giants, these European giants, in my opinion. Um, sometimes they're giant killers, and sometimes they're the giants themselves. Um, and even as recent as 2 years ago, they were in the finals with Real Madrid. Of course, they did lose, but they were there. They were, of course, it's a different team. They don't have a Jadon Sancho anymore. Um, but it's almost hard for me to go against them. But I do definitely see a huge world where Atalanta walks out of this alive and unscathed. 3-1 is not a bad prediction in my opinion, but I think it'll be 2-2 at the end of the second leg. Um, and then I think Borussia Dortmund will get something. They'll get something in extra time, or they'll go to penalties. Because, like you said, it's going to be a pretty conservative affair. Both teams are going to be kind of, playing a low block, especially now you see Schlotterbeck and Sule out for Borussia Dortmund. They're going to try and reinforce that defense as best as possible. And then that's kind of in the Atalanta code. Um, that's in their DNA, the way they play. So I think I'm gonna stick with my boys Borussia Dortmund, but I really don't know. It's this one also, like the Galatasaray match against Juventus, is also a pretty close matchup.
So two picks in, and we've both disagreed on either one. That's
This is what podcasting's about.
oh for sure. For sure. This is great so far, but yeah, I'm interested to see how that one based on again, I think it comes down to which team imposes their style on each other. I think whoever does will have more success in that matchup. Now, moving on, another all country matchup. I think the only one that I think it's like an all country thing.
Yeah,
Monaco against PSG. Now, Monaco, despite their struggles this year, they actually beat PSG earlier this season in November in Liga. Now, Do you think that, despite, Monaco's struggles this year, do you think they can take that into this game and be use that as a confidence boost of, hey, we've beaten this team already this year. We can do it again over two legs.
I do not think so at all, actually, because I really you see PSG as of recent against these French teams. You saw what they did against Marseille, absolute battering, and Dembele is really in form right now. Um, and then Monaco's performances as of late, I guess, in the Champions League haven't been amazing. You saw what happened against Real Madrid, huge battering. Of course, that's Real Madrid. That's the best team in the world. But um, you know, I really cannot see a world where I can see a world where Monaco can make it close. Of course, I just cannot see a world where PSG kind of loses their mark against them and then has Monaco, rise above.
Yeah, I think with Monaco, they've been just absolutely battered by injuries. I've got the list in front of me. It is insane. Like almost like half their team is just like all injured. And that includes their top scorer this season, Ansu Fati, is going to miss out on that game, which I think is huge. But I want to talk more about PSG because this team has shown that they are not even close to the PSG that we saw at this point last year. I think that with PSG, I think what makes them hard to say is that obviously we saw Ousmane Dembele. He's obviously an incredible talent. However, they've just not been at that level they were last year. We saw that over the weekend they lost 3-1 to Rennes, and Dembele even came out after the game and called his teammates out. And I think that just shows you that I think they will win this tie. I could see Monaco. I don't think it will be close, but again, with PSG, my point is that I don't think they're this dominant team that we saw them last year, and I think there's maybe some tension going on with obviously Dembele feeling the need to call the team out. And again, I just as far as a Champions League contender, I don't really rate PSG super highly, but again, they will win this. I think they could use this as a confidence booster, get them going, and try to find their way again. But again, I worry for PSG for this Champions League campaign because it's not been very strong. I mentioned before they lost 2-1 to Sporting in a game that they did not look very good in. And even just throughout this campaign, I think we all thought coming off of what they did last year, they were so impressive. They smashed Inter in the final. They were, you know, beating teams left and right. But we haven't seen that same PSG this year. And I think at some point, maybe not now, but at some point we will see their true level that they aren't, you know, there's issues that they have to fix and they're not this crazy team that we all thought they would be coming off last year where they could win multiple Champions Leagues potentially in a row.
I mean, I agree. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Dembele's comments after the match against Rennes. Um, I feel like I don't really know what to chalk it up to. I guess their downfall. I don't know if it's been the injury crisis that happened with Hakimi leaving for injury. I don't know if it's been, I feel like Dembele is obviously the final arbiter when it comes to that. He is their main man. He is their Ballon d'Or winner. He is their star man. And he is telling the press that, last season the players put the badge above themselves, and then now they're putting themselves above the badge, and that's why everything's not working. It's really a sight to see, especially the league on table. They're now second below Lens. That's usually historically PSG always have the league on wraps, which is why they can, kind of exert their attention towards the Champions League and trying to win that. You've never seen them, rarely see them, have these woes in League One, but you're seeing them now, and it's good that you mentioned that they're really not the team that they were last year, and they've kept more or less their same roster, of course, with the departure of Gianluigi Donnarumma in favor of Lucas Chevalier. Um, I wasn't a fan of that decision when it happened. I'm not a fan of it now. But we can't really chalk it up to one change in the roster. I feel like it's just a combination of attitude problems and maybe some slight injury woes and some roster turnover and I guess Luis Enrique is losing his footing with this team.
Yeah, but as far as this matchup goes, again, I think PSG will be fine, but I definitely do worry about them going forward. I'll say,
Yeah,
I think same score as the Madrid one. I'm gonna say 6-1
yeah,
PSG.
comfortably, yeah.
First time we
I can
actually agree
agree.
on something now. It
I'll
only took
look just in the interest
PSG.
of us disagreeing, I'm gonna say 5-1.
Okay. All right. Just one goal that time. All right. Now it's time for your team. Benfica versus Real Madrid. We obviously saw what happened in the last match day. Madrid falling short 4-2. Not only was that big for Benfica, obviously getting them to the playoff stage when that was pretty much the last thing they had to play for. They're obviously behind big in the league. They got knocked out of the cup, so they pretty much put all their eggs into that one game, and they obviously came out on top. So not only was that big for them, but it was not good for Real because that game evidently cost them a spot in the top eight, and now they have to go through the same team that outplayed them in the last game of the season. So, what do you think Madrid can sort of take away from that and going into this one?
Um, I really when I was watching the match, the last match of the league phase, between Real Madrid and Benfica, it almost kind of came down to just a difference in how much each team wanted it. I do feel like Real Madrid, that wasn't their worst game of the season by any means. They were creating chances. Um, Arda Güler had an amazing game, but he was hooked off in the I think in the 70th, maybe say 75th minute. Um, I don't really. I think it's just a man management kind of issue. I think Jose Mourinho, as poorly as he's been doing in the Liga NOS, in the Portuguese league, I do really think that in this past match between Benfica and Real Madrid, he elevated his players. Um, Cristiani, he had a great game. Pavlidis, he had a great game. He was always in position. He just couldn't kind of bag a goal. Um, what I do think Real Madrid can change about their last performance in order to propel themselves to a win this match or this fixture, I guess. Well, honestly, just to start out slow. We don't need to start out blazing, 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 and then kind of get tired and have Benfica pounce on us after, our legs are worn out and all that. And I think we really need to reinforce our defensive prowess. Huijsen hasn't been the signing that I kind of blew him up to be. Rudiger has had his woes. Carreras has been great, but he can't really do everything on his own as a left back. And then we see Trent as a more forward-thinking right back. He can make some plays off the right for Mbappe or for Valverde or Vinny or whoever it may be. I think it all kind of comes down though to how you start the match. How you start the match is the most important thing, especially for this Real Madrid team. And if they can start the match in a more composed way where they're not giving up chances as much like they were last time, I think that they can kind of put this match up to bed.
I think last year was a lot more on the negative side as far as Madrid with obviously, their struggles in the Champions League and struggles against obviously Barcelona. I think this year it's been much more of a roller coaster. Obviously lots gone on off the field with obviously Xabi Alonso and the relationship with certain players that evidently cost him his job at Madrid. And since then, things haven't really changed as far as results. I mean, and even how the team is played, I think they're sort of back to that like Ancelotti style where it's like there's no style. It's just, you know, give it to, if Mbappe's cooking, you give it to him. If Vinny's cooking, give it to them. If they're not, then well, now what? And then defensively, they obviously, like you said, they try to fix things. Still not really at the level where they want it to be, and we saw that obviously in the Benfica game. as well as many other games that they played this year. So with Madrid, I think it'll be tougher. I think this time with no Jude Bellingham. I think they lost him a couple of weeks ago. That'll be felt. But I
Hmm.
think similar to the thing that I've said about some of the other matchups, Madrid will have far and away not only the best player on the field, but I think the best player in the world in Kylian Mbappe. And I think him alone will be enough to get them through Benfica, at least Benfica. I'm not sure if they at this point they can hang with some of the other top teams because I think they're far more in terms of like a system and a lot more consistent. But I think when you have Mbappe, if he's on it, and even Vinny as well, we saw it over the weekend. He was on his stuff. I think it'll be tough. It's tough for Benfica to beat this team twice. I think what happened last time really just comes down to the fact that their back was against the wall. That was like their Champions League final, essentially. If they got knocked out of that, they probably end the season with they go through the season with nothing else to play for, and so they came out, gave the performance of their life. Now they have to do it twice. And I think Madrid are just too good of a team for them to allow that to happen again. So again, I think Benfica will push back. I think Mourinho's found something there, but I think Madrid, the quality will outweigh it regardless. I think it'll be close, but I'm gonna say 5-4 for Real Madrid.
Oh, I was thinking 5-3. I really do think that, yeah, like, I mean, we both have high scoring affairs. I think, like you said, Mbappe is definitely such a catalyst, especially this season, to scoring. And even like an underrated part of his game is making plays for his teammates, making these next passes, these final passes. People always want to, you know, talk about him like he's selfish or like he's a dictator, or you see all the memes on the internet and stuff like that. But he really is a great team player, especially in the final third of the pitch. And he's really capable, like you said, of propelling this team to high heights. And I think that, you said they'll score four, I say they'll score three. I think we're drawing at strings right now. Like I don't think like they're gonna score. Benfica will score. They actually have a very good attacking setup. Pavlidis, maybe he didn't have a good match against Real Madrid the last time. Maybe he just couldn't buy a goal with $1 billion. But I really do think him and his wingers are gonna, push back, like you said. I hope it's not four. I hope it's zero, but I think it'll be three.
So again, only one goal off, but still the same
Hmm.
prediction, Real Madrid to go through against Benfica. Now, on to the day two matchups. Not as strong, I think, as day one, but I think still some interesting things to talk about, especially from you mentioned at the start there, surprises of the Champions League. We'll start with Karabag against Newcastle. First thing is, from my perspective, fair play to Karabag. Me and my friends did like a little like Champions League like we predicted like each match, and I said that they wouldn't win a single game, and they've somehow won three, and they're now in this playoff position that I don't think they even imagined themselves being in at the start of this campaign.
I mean, yeah, they've definitely over exceeded everybody's expectations. That's one of the reasons, like we discussed at the beginning of the pod, why this league phase change is such a good thing. It gives an opportunity to these smaller teams to, you know, play on a stage that they never thought they'd play in. And then since we're platforming them onto these stages, we get to see their talent, we get to see their quality. If I were to point out Karabag FC to anybody before this season, prior to this season, 99% of them wouldn't know the team, and then the 1% that do probably wouldn't think that they could get to the round of 32 of the Champions League. But since we allowed them the opportunity to play in these matches, to play with these high stakes, they showed themselves and they're there. And then unfortunately, I think this is where their time kind of ends against Newcastle. I'm sure you can agree. Um, Newcastle have had their woes this season. Um, their two wins in their last five. Um, but they have had two convincing wins off the bounce in their last two matches, one against Tottenham, one against Aston Villa. Two sides that, you know, Tottenham hasn't been the best, but Aston Villa have been killers this season, both in the Europa League and in the Premier League. Um, I think Newcastle, I think Anthony Gordon could be a good, a good catalyst for the success of Newcastle, especially in this match. I think they're defensively sound. I think Dan Burn is a great defender. I think Malik Thiaw, great addition for this team. And I think Harvey Barnes, when it comes down to it, when it comes to these, if it's ever a tie, if it's ever, you've probably noticed throughout the season, anytime it's a tie late in the match, he's gonna score. He's gonna get something. So I predict Newcastle going through. I would say 3-1 or 3-0.
Personally, I'm happy to be in the 1% of people that knew who Karabakh were, but didn't think that they would actually do anything. But
Wow. I mean, I'm in the 99.
but yeah, I think like you said with Newcastle, they've showed that they can play up to their competition. We saw that they gave PSG a great run in their last match, got them a 1-1, which stopped PSG from being in the top eight stage. And like you mentioned, and the duo of Anthony Gordon and Harvey Barnes. Gordon's got 8 goals and assists in the Champions League. That's one a game, so you know he's going to be up for it, especially without their top scorer Bruno Guimaraes. He's not playing through obviously with injury and stuff. So I think
hmm
Newcastle they just have so much quality over Karabakh. But I will say like Karabakh, every couple of Champions Leagues we always see this fairy tale of a team that exceeds all the odds and gets to a place where never thought. Unfortunately, Karabakh is not going to be that team. I think Newcastle is far superior, and they've really showed it over these last couple of games. I've been impressed with how they've sort of grown into this season. I think obviously at the beginning they struggled a lot. I think a lot of I noticed a lot of English teams struggle to sort of deal with balancing Europe and Premier League and other cup competitions. I mean, English League, I think, has like 2 different cup competitions now. Obviously, you're seeing the FA
hmm
Cup and Carabao Cup at the beginning, Champions League. But I think Newcastle, we're starting to see their best version of them now. Even with a couple of injuries that they've had, they've still proven they're more than quality enough to hang with a lot of the top teams. Like even in the beginning, they played against Barcelona the first game, did all right against them, and then obviously PSG, and then recently Spurs, Villa, big wins there. So Newcastle, I think they got this in the bag. 4-1 for me.
Okay, okay. 4-1. Who's gonna be the best player on the pitch, do you think? Harvey Barnes, Anthony Gordon.
Anthony Gordon.
Um,
Anthony Gordon for sure. I think he's
yeah.
been their go-to guy in the Champions League, and I think
Super clinical. Super clinical.
he's on for another one as well against Karabakh. Now, onto the other surprising team that we mentioned in the beginning, Bodo Glimt. They got 2 incredible wins to end off their first Champions League campaign. However, it's not going to get much easier for them. They're going up against Inter Milan, the top team in Serie a team that's again so experienced in Europe. They've made big runs obviously in the past, but that Champions League final run not too far in the rear mirror. That was in 2023, I believe.
hmm
So, I mean, we've seen Bodo Glimt though. They've become sort of the giant killer recently, taking out Man City, taking out Atleti in their last game away from home as well, which is super impressive. And now we get to see them once again. But like I said, it's a team that they've showed their quality all year in Inter Milan. They started their campaign off really strong. I thought they were going to be a shoo-in for the top eight. They won, I think, their first 3 or 4 matches in a row, and but then from there, obviously they've had tough schedule. I think that comes down with it. They played against teams like Arsenal and other Liverpool. Those are close games in Atleti as well. They lost 3 of those games, so I think the quality is so much more. But again, I think with Bodo Glimt at least compared to Carabao, I think they've shown that they have a lot more in it to beat the top teams like Man City and Atleti. But I think Inter is also a different level as well.
I agree. I agree. I think I really hope it doesn't end up being a purple patch for Bodo Glimt. I really, like you said, every couple Champions League, you have a team, that has this, success story, this fairy tale run, where they get far in the Champions League when nobody predicted them to. I really do hope we find, whether it be Karabag or whether it be Bodo Glimt, I really hope we do get a story like that in this Champions League. I don't really see it as probable though. just because of how safe Inter has been more or less throughout the season. Of course, they're first in the Serie A. Despite, the turnaround since their Champions League loss to PSG. They lost Simone Inzaghi, their manager that propelled them to those heights. Um, and Lautaro Martinez, as good as he's been, has not been having the season that he, was chalked up to have. People, definitely saw him as more than what he's performing as right now. But I do, despite all of these, I do really think that it's gonna be a far and away win for Inter. I think I don't know if Bodo Glimt is one of those teams where it's kind of hard to go to their ground. I think Galatasaray, you see the fans, the Turkish fans are crazy. You see that with a lot of other teams. I'm not sure if this is the case with Bodo Glimt. They did win against City away, or City at home, sorry. But I don't think it's a matter of home and away. I think Inter wins both games, and I think it's a convincing 4-0 or 3-0.
Like what you brought up there with the with sort of like playing at home, because I think from an atmosphere standpoint, I mean, I think Galatasaray and teams like that. I mean, I don't think Bodo Glimt's doing that. However, from a geographical and from a climate standpoint, I would argue that they are actually one of the tougher teams to play. They're all the way up in Norway. I think outside of Kairat, which I mean, they're just an anomaly when it comes to from a
Yeah.
geographical standpoint, all the way in Kazakhstan. Apart from that, I think Bodo Glimt, they're all the way up in the north of Norway, and you have to factor obviously geographical and also the climate. I mean, it's mid-February. Who knows what, kind of weather we could be seeing in Norway and how tough that'll be an adjustment for a team like Inter Milan playing in Italy all year. So I think the first leg or whatever I think yeah, the first leg where it's in Norway, I think that could be an opportunity for them to hang in there with Inter and really get something and put a little bit of pressure on them. But I think I think we'll see again even in the return leg. I think Inter they should have this one. They really should. They're it's not like they're a team that's coming into this necessarily struggling. I think they're the top team in Italy for a reason, and obviously they're coming off a big win at the weekend against Juventus, a late winner from Zielinski. So I think carrying that, I think one you could say with Bodo Glimt is they were playing a Man City team that wasn't, you know, in a bit. They've also been a bit of a roller coaster team this year. Same with Atleti. They haven't necessarily been at their best, but I think an Inter team that is certainly playing at a much higher level than those two teams, I think is going to be their toughest. And I say they will fall short five. I'll give Bodo Glimt a little bit of benefit. I'll say 5-2. I
Okay.
think they could find a way to score. I think at least once in both legs.
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they came away with a goal or two.
Yeah, we love Bodo Glimt. Even regardless of what happens, they I think what they've done in this tournament, it's huge for them. Their first Champions League, and they've already they can say that they've beaten teams like Man City and Atletico. I mean, who can say that? Like
I,
that's
I mean, this season Real Madrid can't. They can't say that. They lost to
and
both of them.
yeah, they done in that sense they've done more than Real. So fair enough to
Fair,
vote on
fair
Glimt. But
play.
now, speaking of Atletico Madrid, we're going to talk about them next, their matchup against Club Brugge. Now, both teams are sort of a weird position. In Club Brugge, obviously, they've been a mainstay in the Champions League for a couple of years. They've managed to string a couple of good seasons. I think they're a team that you usually tend to see them, around the round of 16. They're a team that hangs around the middle every now and again you'll see them get a great result. They got one, I think, earlier this Champions League window against Barca. They got a 3-3 draw against them. Atleti
Hmm.
is not far removed from beating Barca 4-0. And I think with that matchup, it'll give them a lot of confidence heading into this matchup here.
Yeah, I mean, especially like a name that jumped off the page for me in that Barca 3-3 tie was Carlos Forbes. He I was watching the match in class. I don't. I was really. It was a hate watch to Barcelona, but the way he was playing and the aggression in which he played with, and the strength and the speed in which he played with was unbelievable. So I really do think that this can be the case against Atletico Madrid. You see, they've been, we've been talking about roller coaster teams. They've embodied that. You saw they won 4-0 in the Copa del Rey against Barcelona in an astounding fashion. And then on Saturday, yesterday, no, it was yesterday, I think on Sunday, they lose 3-0 to Rayo Vallecano, a relegation team in La Liga. So you see them kind of, you know, they'll win these games they're not supposed to win, and then they'll lose the games they are. So you never really know. It's kind of a volatile team when you're looking at Atletico Madrid. So I'm honestly gonna say I really would not be surprised if Club Brugge were to leave, and I want to give at least one upset. I guess I gave Galatasaray as the upset, which is why I will stick with Atletico Madrid, but I really would not be surprised if Club Brugge were to leave. And I do think Atletico Madrid, um, with Jan Oblak, I think they'll be pretty much a fortress. Carlos Forbes will do everything he can, but I don't think that it'll be to any of avail. I'm gonna say 2-0 across two legs for Atletico.
So going with Atleti for that one. Now, here's my thinking for this one. These two teams have really struggled when it comes to keeping the ball out of the net in the Champions League. Brugge has given up, I think, 17 goals and Atleti 15 goals in the league phase. And like you said with Atleti, you don't know which version you're going to get. Any given version, you can get the 4-0 Barca version or the 3-0 loss to Rayo. So, and I think that's the version that we are going those are the two versions we will see out of Atleti. I think first leg in Belgium, I could see Club Brugge coming out, taking the advantage, and then the second leg we could see a potential Atleti comeback. So with that, I expect it to be very high scoring, and I'm gonna say 4-4. It will go to penalties, and like you said, they've got Jan Oblak in goal, so I think I'll have to favor Atleti at that point.
That would be cinema, and I don't even see it as outside the realm of possibility. Um, if I were to see that though, I would skip class to watch that. Just putting that out there.
I'm smelling an Atleti comeback in the second leg. They'll be down a goal, down two, comeback,
Yeah,
extra
and the
time.
the
I
pressure is
can just
mounting on
yeah.
Simeone. It's
Yeah, for
mounting.
sure. Especially like I said, from the defensive standpoint, he always prides himself as this, defensively structured coach, and then for them to concede almost 2 goals a game in the league phase is very
It's
concerning
brutal. Yeah.
for Atleti. And again, we don't know which version we're gonna get. So I'll have to tune in to see what we actually get to see out of them. Now, last one, the last matchup that we'll get. Bit of a underwhelming one to end it off, but still, Olympiacos against Bayer Leverkusen. Now, the interesting thing with this one is that these two teams have faced each other less than a month ago in match day 7 of the league phase. Olympiacos came out on top 2-0 in that one at home. They've won 3 straight games in the UCL. They're currently second in the Greek league. So I would say, as far as form goes, I think they are much in a much better position than Bayer Leverkusen are at this point.
I agree. I agree. And I think the main man that I usually look at, I don't really like tune in to Olympiacos a whole lot. I watched, of course, their match against Real Madrid, where my GOAT Mbappe scored 4 goals. But other than that, I haven't really been tuning into them, but who I have been tuning into is the Moroccan national team, and their striker up top, Ayoub El Karabi, is a Olympiacos player, and I think that he is so clinical. He has great positioning. That's what I've noticed about his game. He knows exactly where to be to receive passes. He knows exactly where to be to receive, to be a beneficiary of defensive mistakes. He knows exactly where to be. Um, just to finish chances. He's super clinical. I think that he can really, you know, move the needle when it comes to matches like these, especially against an opponent like Leverkusen. Um, I would honestly, I'm not like I don't really tune into either of these teams. I can't really honestly give an educated. I can honestly really speak about Ayoub and Karabi and his form, coming out of the AFCON. Um, but honestly, I'll say Olympiacos. I think that they can really do it. I think it didn't show it in the score sheet, but they did kind of hold their own against Real Madrid. They had a little bit they had some chances. Their defense was fairly sound, of course. in the moments where they did concede, it was bad. But I really do think that they can come out of this on top. I do think this would be their last round though, but I do think they can get out past Leverkusen. I'm curious as to what you think of that.
No, I honestly agree. I would actually pick Olympiacos as a team as well. You just mentioned Akarbi, he's the current top scorer in the Greek league. Hasn't had that quite the same form in the Champions League, but obviously he missed out on that playing AFCON, so we get to see him now in action in this game, which I think is a huge test for Leverkusen. And I also don't trust them from an attacking standpoint purely because you look at their top scores in the Champions League. Their top goal scorer so far this year is Alejandro Grimaldo, who's a left back, and he
Back, yeah,
leads
left back.
and he leads their team in goals in the Champions League. So all credit to him. He's obviously one of the best left backs in the world. You know, he's been a huge game changer for Leverkusen ever since he's gotten there. But that really concerns me when it comes to a match like this, Olympiacos. They were shut out, obviously, in their previous matchup. And again, I kind of see it going the similar way. I think Olympiacos, I think they'll be the much more clinical team in that one, and I could see them coming out on top. I'll say over two legs, 3-1.
Okay, 3-1. I think I agree because Olympiacos, I really do think they can catch Leverkusen off the counter. Um, because as it's projected, at least as of what I'm seeing per FOTMob, I think Leverkusen will be playing a three at the back with wing backs, Grimaldo being one of them, um, which kind of gives them an opportunity to catch them on the break, to catch them on the breakaway. Um, 3-1, I think, yeah, I'll agree with you this time. Let's go 3-1. We're in it together.
The first one we can actually submit together as our joint prediction. Olympiacos 3-1. So there you have it. These are all of our predictions for the Champions League playoff round. Abdul, thanks for coming on. If you have any last thoughts or anything about Champions League and or just football in general.
Um, no, I don't have any football thoughts. I think everybody should appreciate what they got in this Seb Central podcast. That's what it's called, right? Sorry.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think I think everybody should, you know what I'm saying, should tune in every time, should listen to what he's saying. This brother knows what he's talking about. I think you know, he's grinding, he's doing his best, and I think that just really you just gotta listen to what he's talking about. He knows what he's talking about. He's really well versed, and um I think you should just keep doing your thing. Props to you. I'm gonna give you all your flowers. This was such a good experience. I've never been on a podcast. I guess maybe you can tell by the way I was talking, but um, it's been awesome, and I really appreciate you bringing me on.
And hopefully this isn't the last time we
I
see you
hope
on here
so.
because
I
yeah,
hope
this was
so.
this was really fun, honestly. And if there's anything more, obviously we have it's a big year for footy with obviously regular season, but also the World Cup. I'm super looking forward to that, and then other sports as well. I think this is it's one of the best years I think I've can in my lifetime that I can honestly remember when it comes to the amount of like great sporting events that we're gonna have this year and special ones. Obviously, we're seeing the Olympics right now go on. But yeah,
Hmm.
it's a great time to really get into um all this, and it's just really fun. And again, love to do it with you again sometime. But yeah, this was really fun. Thanks for tuning in.
I got you. Yeah, I appreciate you having me, man.